Good evening, and you're very welcome to the first ever live broadcast of the Leitrim GAA podcast here on finalwhistle.ie. It's the third episode of the season, and of course, it is once again myself, Breffney Early, with you for the next 50 minutes or so, talking all things GAA. Now, we've done them as live before, but this is the first time we're actually live, and we've got a lovely kind of lineup today. We're going to be talking later on in the programme to Maeve Quinn about the ladies' opening round victory in the Little National Football League Division 4 there, where they overcame Fermanagh quite easily in the end. We'll hear from Clare Owens, the team captain, as well as her coach and manager, Hugh Donnelly, later in the programme. But first, we're welcoming back an old stalwart of the show, Aidan Rooney. You're very, very welcome back to the programme. Aidan, how are you doing?
Thanks, Breffney. Yeah, good to be back now. Wintered well, as they say.
You don't need, well, you can say that about me as well. You don't need an introduction at this stage in Leitrim football. Anyone who's been following Leitrim football for any period of time at all is well aware of the exploits of the team in 95 or 94. I nearly got that mixed up. 95, not such a good season. We won't talk about that Galway defeat. But in terms of 94, obviously scored the winning point that day in the Hyde, and a fantastic day for Leitrim football. But you're here today to talk about really the newest edition of Leitrim football and how we've been shaping up over the last 2 weeks with Andy Moore in charge of the team. And I suppose, what's your initial impressions? Obviously, you're a foot in both camps here. Your son Nathan, part of the Sligo panel, but you've been kind of following the thing from a distance. What's your first impression of how the season has gone so far for Andy and the team?
Well, I suppose, the season's always start off, definitely, the kind of, when you're talking about inter-county football, before Christmas doesn't really matter. It's not, it has no significance really as to, it's a lovely period. It's the honeymoon period between the pre-season training and the new managers, and then the reality of post-Christmas action. The county season, I suppose, is compressed right in. So if you start well, I suppose momentum is everything. But I've seen Leitrim Sligo in the FBD game. Obviously, I've seen Sligo since in their Carlow game, and at this stage of the season, I suppose it's strange to say there's a renewed vigor about both outfits, particularly Leitrim. The game against Cavan was kind of a shot to nothing in the sense that they didn't really know where they were. The game in the Dome against Sligo was it was a hard game to judge. The Dome is a difficult place to judge a game because conditions are perfect and it's kind of the first game out on the surface and all that kind of stuff. But the performance against Cavan seemed to have merit in it from the point of view of, we kind of went in tentatively, we went at it, we saw who we were, and just chatting to Emily Mulligan this evening, the feeling in the camp was, if they treated it maybe with a bit more vigor themselves and kind of gone after it, maybe they could have won that game. But what it did was it gave them a foothold, and a confidence foothold. The performance in Tipperary was, people saying, you always hear this talk after a victory against a perceived better team or a team that's going well, that they're off form or they're this, that, and other. The reality is that to go to Semper Stadium and beat Munster champions a couple of years ago, not only beat them but beat them substantially. It's a very positive. It's a very positive frame of mind. And funny, you talk about there the publicity, and you see Facebook at the minute, and Andy Moore is certainly bringing a kind of a carnival atmosphere to the county. I don't think any manager in our past history, going back through the years, has ever had the kind of razzmatazz around him that Andy has brought. But, some people, maybe us older stock, might be saying it's not a great way to be going about your business, putting yourself right out there to be knocked down. But I just feel at the minute it seems to be working. There's a buoyancy about the county. There's a buoyancy about the team. There's a freshness about the team. It's a very inexperienced team in some ways. There's guys, supposed to back in the team. You have a Bruin as captain. You have Jack Heslin back in the team. Reardon O'Rourke starting. There's a lot of fresh new faces on the team. That's different from the last couple of years. Again, for a manager, you can say that's low risk stuff. Well, it's low risk stuff if you're not winning. You're down. There's no expectation. But when you start to win games, and all of a sudden, whereas coming from round 3 of the league has now become, the ultimately the most important round of the league. There's 2 massive games in Division 4 this weekend. We're at home in Carrick with a massive game in Sligo. We're at home to Cavan up the road, and everybody's talking about this last day out could be a big day for Leitrim Sligo. Well, I think it actually could be, with merit, because having seen the results in the group to date, if Leitrim approach the game properly on Sunday, your feeling would have to be that the game is there for the winning. Like London have won 2 games, albeit Waterford, who had a draw against Tipperary the first day, and Carlow, who, to be honest with you, and it's not nice to talk about any county in this regard. I suppose maybe in the past we would have played Kilkenny in league games. I would have played against Kilkenny, to be honest, and would have been horrendously poor.
420 to a point or so or two. Yeah.
Well, it was kind of the way it was, and to be fair, like I was in the Marfix Park last week for the Carlow game, and I don't think, and there's no disrespect to Niall Carew, it's the most dismal league performance I've seen from any team. It's shocking stuff, and Sligo took full advantage of it. But the reality is, definitely, that Leitrim are on a bit of a roll. They've got a team on the pitch that
I have to laugh. Sorry to cut across, but I have to laugh because they've had 1 win in almost 2 years, and we're calling it a roll momentum. It kind of doesn't really justify the terminology, really, but at the same time, I think we can all kind of feel that building expectation that we saw in Terry Hyland's first year as well. And you mentioned the razzmatazz that Andy brings to it, and I know he's just back from New York on that particular recce over the last weekend, which was very successful for Leitrim GAA as well. What is it about this group of players and this management team that's allowing that to build up? Is it just that little bit of publicity and X factor that Andy brings?
It probably is. Well, I spoken to James Clancy, shortly after their appointment, and there was a sense of James' huge apprehension, because they've never been in this position before, and sometimes it can work, at the moment, like one swallow doesn't make a summer. Obviously, we're not getting carried away, but the reality here is that you're on an upward curve, and you've played 2 of the bigger teams in the division, and now you've opened the door for yourself. So you've left yourself, a real fighting chance, having gone through the first 2 games with the performance and then a win. It's different, I suppose. I'm not being disrespectful, but if you'd played Carlow, and Waterford in your first 2 games, and everyone would be kind of saying, actually, that's Carlow and Waterford. There's not much expected. But they've played Cavan, who are probably the group favourites, and have played Tipperary. It's 2 great performances, and it's a good performance and a very good performance that have got them, on the road. So look, you can only take it on a smirk, Breffney. Like, we are where we are. We came out of a very, very dismal 2-year period with COVID, and to be honest, haven't been involved in club football over those 2 years. And I don't think it was a surreal time. It was a surreal, and I don't think really, in all fairness to any team, I don't think it's fair to judge them good or bad on that period, because I don't think any team had prepared properly. I don't think any team had got the same type of preparation that they're getting now at this stage, even into a new post-COVID era. So I think COVID did have a massive effect, and whether it was good or bad, I don't think any team was where it normally would be. And I think maybe now, like, Sunday's huge, absolutely huge. London are coming to town. They'll have no respect for us, as always. Interesting, there's a couple of Sligo guys in there doing well for them at the minute as well, which brings a bit of added spice to it from the Sligo perspective. The reality is that if the game is Sunday, if Leitrim can put 2 points on the board Sunday, you're all of a sudden you're looking down the table at teams. And we were here a few years ago, with Terry getting out of Division 4 into Division 3. This is our chance. We have to say it openly. This is our chance. It's popped up for us. With the Cavan Tip games out of the way, we now have to. Obviously, some very difficult games left yet. There's still football in Wexford. There's still, Tipperary are going to get better as it goes through. We got them at the right time in the league. So, to be honest with you, if we want to be really, critical about this, we'd be disappointed if we don't win Sunday. We'd be disappointed if we're not pushing for promotion in that last game in the Marfix Park. That's the reality of where we are now. You know what I mean? I suppose it can take any turn along the road, but it'll be very disappointing if we're not in that position, Breffney.
You mentioned him earlier, Emma Mulligan. Let's talk about him for a moment, because he's been an integral part of the Leitrim squad, most Leitrim squads, over the last decade or more, with 1 or 2 notable exceptions, the last season or 2, and a kind of mid-career break as well to the US around 2015 maybe. What's your take on him? You know him quite well. He was played under you at St Mary's in Sligo last year, and I suppose there's 2 trains of thought. I think he's got a lot to offer Leitrim at the moment. Others would tell you he's past his best. What's your thoughts on him? Will he play a big part in that squad, or is he really just there to to provide that kind of experience and give that last 15, 20, 25 minutes where needed.
Well, I suppose to put anyone's opinions to bed that might be known. I was talking to him this evening for a little while. There's absolutely nothing from Andy Moran's point of view as regards promises or guarantees for Emlyn Mulligan, which is a great thing to hear. Normally when a player of that stature and experience goes into a group, they're nearly automatically guaranteed their jersey. Emlyn hasn't really gotten any game time yet. But his attitude, I have to say, like last year for us in the club in St. Mary's, he was outstanding. He was outstanding. He brought a professionalism to it. Himself and Elaine had their baby daughter. His work got intensified. There was lots of excuses for him last season to come into our scenario and take it easy and relax. But to be honest, I wasn't surprised, but I was taken aback at the level of professionalism and the level of effort and level of work rate. And he added a huge amount to us last season. And I was looking forward to doing the same again this season for us. And I know, speaking to James Phelan, over the lockdown and meeting him in Sligo, Emlyn, like Dara Rooney, is a massive loss to Melvin Gales, and it can't be overstated how big a loss those guys are to their club, their home club. But to be answer your question, he added a huge amount to our campaign last season, and I think, I agree, Breffney. Really at the moment for Emlyn Mulligan and for players, there's 2 seasons here now. People are forgetting the fact that with the shortened intercounty season, it's just compressing it and condensing it more, but it's the same amount of games been shoved in to a shorter calendar. And then there's another season straight after it, which is your club season, which is just, so in the old days, or 2 years ago, you were playing integrated county and club seasons, which meant that for large parts of the season, the clubs weren't getting their county players. That was the reality. So in other words, the players were playing less because they weren't involved in some of the club games that they had to play. So now it looks like, regardless when you go in the championship, whether it's a Connacht final or further or a Tailteann Cup or whatever, you're going to be out of the championship or out of that scenario to play with your club for nearly a full season. So for the likes of Emlyn Mulligan, who you've asked the question about, it's going to be a long season. Whether he's playing or not at the moment, I suppose is the icing on the cake for him if he gets playing. But he's training, so as you well know, it's more difficult to train and not play than train and play. Like if you're playing, it makes the training much easier to get through, even in a mental capacity, all that stuff. But if you're not getting your place in the team at the moment, and to talk to him this evening and get the kind of sense from him that he's there to do whatever he can do and do whatever he has to do. And I suppose there are people out there that would say that Emlyn's, he's bouncing back from the Terry era just to kind of show that he can do it. But like you, Breffney, I would be of the opinion that to have a player of his expertise and experience around the place with the attitude that he has to be a positive. There's no way it can be a negative, especially all those younger players, when the going is going to get tough in the next number of weeks and the games are coming thick and fast and we need to get wins and, difficult wins. Any game in Division 4, any division is difficult to get a win. There's no game, a cakewalk. And so, I think Emlyn Mulligan is a huge factor for Leitrim, be it on the pitch or in the camp. I think, whether Emlyn will be there if he's on the bench over a long period, I don't know. But I know at the minute work commitments are starting to intensify again for him. But I think from Leitrim's point of view and from Andy's point of view, it's a great ace to have in your pack.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the younger players, having someone like that in the dressing room. A lot of these youngsters, the likes of Mark Diffley, Donald Casey, and many more of that age group, Paul Keeney or whoever it might be, would have watched Emlyn lifting that FBD trophy twice as like 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds. And there is that little bit of a kind of a just having that kind of calm and presence in the dressing room as well. So hopefully it all works out for everybody. And I'm glad to see him back and that he gets to kind of finish on his own terms, potentially, hopefully, later on in the year. One other thing, we just want to mention when we're chatting to you here as well is, we mentioned Andy's just back from New York himself on a delegation, very small delegation, to be fair, from the county board, went over to visit the sponsors, Clark's, launched Leitrim jersey over there, finish off the New York leg of the 50-mile challenge as well, and it raised huge money for Leitrim GAA. I know there was some negative feedback about, they're off on a jolly, but the reality of that is that those kind of missions to New York City, they're super important in terms of the finances of the county board, and they were very much a net positive to Leitrim GAA, surely.
Absolutely. And anybody who is living under a rock that thinks not going abroad to source capital, it's foolish to be thinking that way. Like the amount of money, like we would have experience of that 30 years ago when we were brought to New York by the Leitrim contingent in New York, purely out of the generosity of their hearts. These people will do absolutely anything for this county as regards resourcing it. And I suppose at the end of the day, you have to go and you have to show a public face. I know it suited Andy Moran, and there've been people. We were having a joke at work today about how many people would be in the crowd on Sunday willing to tell Andy about his book if things weren't going according to plan.
But being, and to be fair, it's not about Andy at all, the book. It's very much about Mayo GAA rather than Andy Moran.
Absolutely, but with human nature being what it is, I suppose 100%. anything that we can get to sell it is good. And I think at the end of the day, you can look at Andy in several ways. There are two strong Leitrim men in there with him. Let's not forget that. But Andy's making the best of Andy, but that's fine. But from our point of view, it's bringing the publicity back or to us that we didn't have for the last couple of years. And the New York angle is a huge angle because, the amount of money that can be raised in New York and abroad in particular for Leitrim County Board is huge. And to tap into that in any shape or form, and JP Clark is there sponsoring the team, which is fantastic, but absolutely any way at all, because at the end of the day, we can all say, we'll keep hammering away here, and Eamon Dignan and Mike Feeney and these guys are working their socks off, year on year, and plenty more along with them, making money to keep the teams going and give them the best available. But the reality is, definitely, the better we can offer our players, the better we'll be. Like there's no two ways about it. We can talk about money not being that significant, and it's hugely significant as regards, giving the players everything they deserve. Not so much, but everything they deserve as regards, proper financial support and, expenses and all that kind of stuff. And, getting to the level that way, it's a huge benefit to have that as a plus.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you completely. In terms of, I suppose, bring it back to the reason we're here really is that the game on Sunday, it's an early throw-in at 12 o'clock noon in Park Sean McDermott. Get your tickets online because there will not be tickets available on the day, but there's plenty of tickets online. Fantastic crowd the last day. I know you weren't at the game against Cavan, in your supporting Nathan in Sligo and Markovitz Park that day, but fantastic crowd. Probably the biggest crowd we've had for a league game in Leitrim in a long time, probably since the last couple of rounds of Terry's first year. But before that, I can't remember the last time. Maybe back to PJ Carroll, John O'Mahony's time, and when you were playing in the pitch yourself. And that's not today or yesterday, Aidan. No apologies, but I'm right. In terms of the actual game yourself, your thoughts on how it might go for Leitrim? Obviously, London come into it, two easier opponents potentially, but still having not played a game in 2 years to come out with 2 wins is fairly impressive for London side.
Well, I always remind myself when I talk about London of our time and 96 going to Ruislip and just getting out with the skin of our teeth when we were at the top of our of our game, let's say, and it's a warning sign as to what London can produce. And what they have at the minute, they have momentum, they have cohesion, they have a stable panel from the last 2 games. And they're going to come here, Breffney, with absolutely nothing to lose. And this is a very dangerous place for us to be because we're favourites and we're expected to win the game. Like the realities are, they've put away 2 of the weaker sides in the group. Obviously we have to face those sides yet and continue making them look weak. But the reality is here, they have put away the 2 weaker sides in the group as regards Waterford and Carlow. I know Waterford have got a draw against Tipperary, on the first day out in Fairfield. But I think, anything but a win on Sunday for us is huge. It's a huge loss, because what it'll do in essence, if we were to lose on Sunday, it's unthinkable because it puts the league away. The league is then gone because you're going to have, your Tipperary's coming back in, your Sligo and your Cavans. You're going to have too many teams, chasing ahead of you, and too much ground to make up. So Sunday, from our point of view, is a must-win situation. So it'll be interesting to see how Andy approaches that. He's going to do the first 2 games as underdog, which is a nice tag to go in with. Kind of takes the pressure off the group a little bit, And I said we got two good performance, a good performance and a win, with a great performance in Sam Stadium. So the pressure's on now because all of a sudden the whole mantra changes. To we're now favourites at home against one of the lower teams in the group, the bottom half of the table. So we'll be expected to win the game. So it'll be interesting to see how the team handle that. As a new young team, as we said, there's a lot of new fresh players in there. So it's a different kind of an angle. The last time I think we played London O'Hare was to get promoted. I think I was working for Ocean FM that day, and it was a hugely exciting day. But that was a different context. Now we're in a context where we need to get into the battle for promotion, and London are standing in our way. And I see it as a very difficult game, but I don't see Leitrim losing the game, to be honest.
In terms of talking about promotion, we talked about it earlier, that final group game against Sligo in Markovitz Park. All pundits are pretty much predicting that will be, it'll definitely be a playoff or a final for one of the teams at stake, if not both of the teams that day. It's unlikely that both teams won't be involved in that shake-up on the final day of the season. How do you think it's going to go? Who do you predict to join most people's favourites, Cavan, in that Division 4 final this season?
Well, it's always very interesting refereing down here in Sligo, and I've had it all my life. Where Sligo think they're better than everybody, and it's a great position for a Leitrim man in Sligo to be in. And I'm not saying we're there yet in Sligo. Last week's 28-point score will certainly help them along that way. But Sligo are also very conscious, and I know down here they talk about, when Leitrim come to town with intent. So to be honest, you couldn't call that game. Like, you couldn't call it, even if both teams, even if Sligo return Cavan over on Sunday, which is very possible. Sligo have momentum; they're playing quite well. Tony McEntee has found kind of something that's just working for him at the minute. He's not sure what it was, because he didn't go down with any hope. And went with trepidation out of Wexford Park, and he came out with a win. And all of a sudden, the more than anybody else, the thing swings in your way, and you get a momentum, and all of a sudden you're off and running. So, Sligo have got their season off to a great start. But form would tell you Sligo will, going by what Leitrim gave Sligo, or Leitrim gave Cavan, then I would expect the game in Markovitz Park on Sunday to be really, really tight. Conditions are deteriorating here all week. You're looking at pitches getting into very, very heavy condition. There's a lot of rain between now and Saturday. More heavy rain on Sunday. So I think conditions this weekend are going to be, less than favourable for playing decent football. So it's going to be dogfighting again. Sligo have a relatively, I suppose, fresh group, no more than Leitrim. This is where the test of, you talked there earlier on about Emlyn Mulligan and experienced players. Experienced players play a huge role at this time of the year in league football. I don't care what anybody says. Going back to our day when like Mickey Quinn and Shane Heslin, these leaders around the place. Where Ollie Honeyman, absolute rock solid leaders around the place. You need that around the place too, and there's a balance. There's a balance, Breffney, and I just don't know. The test on Sunday for Leitrim will be how that balance is actually working out. Donal Rinn, there's a huge weight of responsibility on him at the minute. It's probably the elder lemon in the group, and you're looking, Keith Byrne is obviously flying up front, but you're looking to see all these young guys,
lots of turns and twists in the road.
Lots of twists and turns.
Aidan, listen, pleasure as always to have you on the show. We'll probably be talking to you ahead of that game, if not beforehand. The very best of luck in your retirement now. You're not involved with any team this year, so you're taking it easy up there in Sligo now. I'm playing golf.
The handicap's coming down slowly. So
excellent. Listen, Aidan, it's been a pleasure as always. We're going to take a look at the ladies' football. Aidan's going to leave us now, but we'll take a look at the ladies' football. We're going to start. I caught up after the game at the weekend with Hugh Donnelly and Clare Owens of the Leitrim squad.
Donnelly, a fairly simple victory in the end there. Very comfortable.
Yeah, look, listen, it's I suppose you can look at it both ways. We can look at maybe the performance of Fermanagh, or we can look at how well we played and the few opportunities that we give Fermanagh. So I'm going to choose the latter. Look, we set about our job. We had a job to do. We set about our tasks, responsibilities. We've done them really well. And I suppose, look, the scoreboard reflects in terms of the dominance, but at the same time, we went about our job and we done it. And look, we got some great scores, some fantastic passages of play, and that was probably the difference in the two teams.
Owens, Leitrim captain for I think third year in a row. That must be a bit of a record.
It's actually fourth, Breffney, would you believe?
I wasn't going to credit you with that, but
I'm that old. It's possible.
Well, today, as it didn't age too much in the left, it turned out to be a fairly straightforward victory in the end. You got to be happy with the performance that your girls put in.
Absolutely, just very happy with the work rate. Like any game of football, everything isn't going to work perfectly or as planned, but every single ball we lost, it was back within seconds because girls were just so willing to work hard for each other, and yeah, loads of really good stuff came off as well, but probably the work rate is what I'm happiest with, and just that we had so many girls on the field and that they gave such a good account of us as a panel and them as individuals.
Yeah, we spoke to Hugh about the fact that every single member of the panel got a run today, some a bit more than others, but at the same time everyone got to feel the ball in their hands and contribute to the win.
Yeah, like it's been a long time coming, and we're really looking forward to today, so delighted that so many girls did get a run. And yeah, look, it's hard for management to kind of get that balance between, you know, keeping a structure to the thing for enough of the game to see it out, and then to give girls a chance as well. So yeah, hopefully the girls that got a run are happy with that.
Very impressive day for your forwards. 418 is a decent score at any level, but quiet enough at the back, except for maybe the last 10 or 15 minutes when Fermanagh seemed to come back into the game. They never really said die, even though the game was well beyond them at that stage.
Yeah, like I suppose every team will have, you know, a chance or two in a match to maybe come back into it or get on the scoreboard, but I think we held them out very, very well for most of the game. They have some very key players, obviously, but I think we dealt well with them. And yeah, as I say, a team will always get a chance or two in a game, so they took them, and fair play to them. But I think overall we held them very well.
Yellow card in the 20 minutes into the game, just the last 10 minutes of the first half, probably killed the game as a contest. You were very comfortable before it, but I think that yellow card just kind of push that wedge a little bit further between the two sides. How important was it for Leitrim to keep the discipline and make sure they kept 15 players in the field at all times today? Yeah,
very important. The ref was very clear about it before the game. He said the rules are the rules. He'll play advantage. You know, he'd be as fair as possible, but he would be applying the rules. And I think he very much kind of stamped his authority in the game in the first maybe quarter, I suppose. But no harm, because then it just meant that girls really knew they had to be disciplined. That yellow card probably just gave us the chance to get ourselves sorted at the back. Like we were kind of still finding our feet there, so it probably did help us just to, as I say, find our feet and get sorted.
Some say you only learn lessons in defeat, but coming out of today's game, what lessons will you take for the rest of the league campaign?
Well, every day is a school day. Like
you're a teacher, you would say that.
Well, yeah, but there is plenty. Like, and as happy as we are with kind of the work rate and the effort, there's always things to work on, and you know, even just kind of how teams can, like they got through a couple of times for points early on that, you know, we wouldn't be happy with that, and just working on kind of how we can set our own structure up and stick with that rather than, you know, reacting to how a team set up as such. But look, we have been working hard. We know we're not finished article at all, so even without the game today, like every time we go training, we're trying to improve something, so we'll just keep at that.
Great crowd today here in Ballinamore. How much of that are you aware of on the pitch? Like probably 700 or 800 people stand nearly full.
Yeah, like it's just lovely to see after the few years we've had, and just that people kind of want to get out. It's available. They could sit at home and watch it, but they chose to come here, and it really does mean a lot. And you know, on tougher days, that does make the difference. So today, I suppose it was nice to have. There'll be days that we actually will need that crowd. So it's just brilliant to see it.
Yeah, no, we spoke to Roisin Fowley during the week, and she was chatting to us about her return back to the team. There's a couple of faces maybe that we've seen in previous years that back in the squad this year. Has that given a bit of a boost to the morale within the group? Yeah,
there's a brilliant mix. There's familiar faces who are back from abroad or back in the fold. There's some new young girls, but they're really, I think I said this to someone else, they're really only young by age. Like they play with such experience, and then the few of us that have been around for a long time. So it's training is brilliant. It's really enjoyable, and I really mean that. It's just there's a good balance of familiarity and new girls in that are really looking to make their mark.
I saw you for the last 10-15 minutes of the game there after you came off, chatting to Hugh on the sideline, looking like a kind of an assistant manager. Is that something you've given thought to yet? Or
no, absolutely not. No. It's you like to, you know, the girls that have gone on, you like to kind of still be supportive of them even when you're on the line. So I don't generally tend to sit in the dugout, but no, definitely not moving that way just yet.
Well, listen, well done today. Best luck in the rest of the league campaign.
Thanks very much, referee.
Maeve, we've heard from the participants on Sunday. For many years, you yourself would have been in that role as captain of Leitrim Ladies over the years. Talk to us about the game. You were at the game on Sunday afternoon in Ballinamore. Not really much of a contest, really. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Leitrim were well ahead from the first 30 seconds, I think. It was less than a minute before they had scored their first goal. In fact, if you weren't there in time, you'd have missed it.
I wasn't. I was a minute late.
I actually was, but I was like, who scored it? Because you were just almost not even nearly getting into watching the game, and suddenly there was a goal. So it was fantastic. And they really did put on a fine performance. Now, I suppose Fermanagh will say that they were missing a number of their players, you know what I mean? But having said that, Leitrim really showed up on the day and showed the kind of football they can do. It was a wonderful team performance, I thought. with obviously a few notables really standing out, I suppose, which Michelle Gockian, I think, deserves, even though I see that she was the top scorer. But apart from that, her ability to look up, and you can see her looking to see what's the best ball, as well as being able to take her own shot, of course. And there was lovely combinations. But I thought also the backs did very well in that, okay, we conceded a goal at the very last 10 minutes. But prior to that, one of the things that worried me last year was our conceding of goals. And we didn't concede any goal last Sunday until the final few minutes. And I wouldn't worry about the final few minutes kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
We had made 15 substitutions at that stage.
15 substitutions, which was wonderful to see too. And fair play to management for making sure that all players did get a chance to get on and even just, somewhat at the pace of it,
Yeah, because nobody, even when they made all those changes, you kind of expect a couple of players maybe not to be at the pace of the game, but nobody stood out, obviously, at least, to be not at the races.
Yeah, there's a great fitness level there. And it's not only just great fitness level, but also great intensity. The players, when they came on, got straight in and straight up to the intensity of it. And that was really good to see.
Now, let's talk about Fermanagh for a second, because obviously last year they met in the championship, 1 point separated the sides, and Leitrim they rode their luck a little bit on that one last year. It's a very different Fermanagh side. How much can you really take from that result at this level? Because I think Fermanagh might struggle to even get results against Antrim and Derry over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody from Fermanagh afterwards, who's involved in some of the other teams, and he was saying they're missing 7 of the players that they would have expected to have out. So I suppose you'd a note of caution. Having said that, it was absolutely terrific display, and the way that Leitrim played and the intensity that they brought to it and how they maintained that intensity is what would give you great confidence and great hope in how they're doing. Fermanagh certainly aren't the team that they were last year, and they certainly have work to do, and they're certainly struggling there a little bit, it has to be said.
Yeah, there's some interesting names probably back after a period away from the game, or maybe a period out of the starting 15 at least, with Leitrim over the last few seasons. Roisin Fowley, probably the most notable. We had her on the show last week. She scored, I think, 1-1 or 1-2 when she came into the fray in the second half. But there was a lot of impressive performances from a lot of players maybe who haven't got to see that much game time in the green and gold jersey over the last 12 or 24 months. Yeah,
no, that's very true. And there was a few players back. You had, of course, Maeve Tye there starting at midfield, and Aidan Quinn, I suppose, back in too, who had been injured, say, a number of years ago. And Sarah Reynolds, I thought, for her debut game.
Not a bad start. 30 seconds in, back of the net.
She was absolute, but also not just that, great finish on that first one, but also she got very involved. She threw her body in and she got involved in the game. She got in, you knew she was there. And she had a few lovely combinations. I must say, admire the way that the forwards, now they overplayed it a little bit at around 40 minutes in the game. They were over elaborating at one stage, but beautiful combinations between the forwards in terms of how they're playing for one another.
Yeah, because last year, I suppose, Alva Clancy would have been part of that forward option, and Myrne Devaney would have featured as well. Myrne, I know, is injured. Alva's, I believe, is travelling or is planning to go travelling in the next little while, so isn't available this year. People would have expected Leitrim maybe not to have the firepower they had last year, but if anything, it seems to be even stronger.
Well, it is quite amazing almost to look at what they have on the line. And there would be many counties glad to have some of the players who are on the line actually starting with them. So they're in a very good position. They're in a very strong from the point of view of, and there seems to be a great mood in camp, shall we say. There seems to be a great atmosphere in camp too, in terms of people really working for one another and enjoying it, I suppose, to some extent, you'd nearly have to say. And no, I mean, they have a savage panel. It's absolutely terrific to see him. Just really looking forward to this year ahead and what they're able to achieve,
Yeah, now if memory serves me right, we chatted early on in last season and you predicted an intermediate championship, but you did have a little caveat that you thought it might be this year rather than last year. It's kind of turned out that way last year, at least. A defeat to Kildare kind of stopped that ambition, but I suppose now, would Leitrim be in the frame, do you think, are they stronger than they were 12 months ago to maybe push on and challenge for that intermediate championship? Of course, the Mary Quinn Cup as well.
Yeah, I know that would be very special, wouldn't it? Yes, no, I think they are. I think they have a stronger squad. I think they have a stronger squad this year, and I think that there's players, I suppose, that have joined some of the younger players like Amy Fowley and Sarah, and even Maeve Ryan, who's the sub goalie. They're a real bonus to the team, and Roisin Fowley that you mentioned as well. I mean, those players kind of bring with themselves their own intensity, and at training, no doubt as well, they do. But I think it's a stronger squad than last year, and possibly starting out better. Last year they had a slow or a later start, should we say, maybe because of COVID and everything else. This year there's really no excuse, you know what I mean? And you would have very high hopes, you know what I mean? And I know I said last year, and I mean, it is just a case of when are they going to do, not will they. Just a case, but it always has been. Leitrim Ladies has always had the ability to win intermediate. I suppose what excites me most, I think, is that when we won in 2007, the players on that team were at the end of their cycle and had been playing the likes, many of us for many, many years, but others had played like Sinead Brennan and the likes of that, and Quinn, 12, 13, 14 years kind of thing, you know what I mean? And this team, okay, there are a few that have, in fact, young players with the vast experience, but they're young, you know, I mean, we talking about the Hessens, they're very young players, you know, they have great experience, and at the same time, they're quite young. And I'd be Leitrim any year, if they got their act together and had the right fitness, which they have this year, and the right kind of skills and work, are capable of winning the Intermediate All-Ireland. But what you'd really like to see then is when they do that they can actually push on and be competitive at senior level.
Yeah, because I suppose we looked at Meath now. I remember that game over in Cavan 2 years ago, and Meath really put Leitrim to the sword that day. You knew there was something special about that Meath side to go on with the intermediate championship and then to go on and win a senior championship. I think Galway did something similar, although it might be 15 years ago now, getting to an All-Ireland final the year after they won the intermediate championship. Can Leitrim do that? And I don't want to count chickens well before they hatch, but if a side like Leitrim were to come through that, is it realistic to expect them to be ultra competitive at the top end of the senior championship, or would it be a case of just try and survive and not come back down straight away the following year?
A little bit between both, I suppose. You know, well, I mean, Meath were able to do it. It depends on just how much they kick on in terms of intensity. Like the intensity that they're reaching now is capable of winning them an intermediate. You'd have it's a whole step up after that. But I suppose the thing about it is they have the ability to. You know, and you look at some of the young players that there are coming up and what have you. The ability is there if it's like made happen. And what I love about it is that the age profile of the players is right. The age profile of the players is right this time around. You know what I mean? So, you know, it is not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when will they do it. You know, will it be this year?
You mentioned that we were talking off air about the Heslin family, and of course our condolences go to the Heslin family in Carrigallen after the death of their father this week. I saw it on social media earlier in the day, so our thoughts with the whole family and the extended community there. But it's been a rough week in that regard for ladies football in the county. Do you want to maybe share?
And I'm going to interrupt you and just say, I suppose our area at the moment are just devastated with the death of Aoife Donegan. It's so sad, and words can't. There are no words, and just our sympathy from the whole community and anybody who and lots of us know the Donegans, and just a beautiful young woman who cut too short.
Absolutely, and I'm sure the entire Gaelic football community at all levels will support both the Heslin and the Donegan family this week in their loss, or yesterday, wherever Hannah. In terms, Maeve, I suppose, finally to finish up, the club season this year, St. Bridget's back at it again for another year. They had a sprightly young goalkeeper in goals last year. Will he be back for another year this year?
Oh, absolutely. And you never know, there could be somebody there to push me out. We'll see. But you know, I'm enjoying. I enjoy playing, and it's great to be able to. Thank God to be able to. You know what I mean? And we have a young team with the notable exception, shall we say? And and you know what? we're building, you know what I mean, and we're building, and last year we would have gone out in the spring league, and I think we may be even suffering the same malady this year, where we're in Division 1 at the moment when it comes to the league. And really, I think everybody will agree we're not fit for that at the moment. But you know what? That's where we are, and we haven't got relegated because of COVID and what have you, and such it is. But it'll be great preparation for us for a championship, and you know, we will keep playing, and we'll enjoy it. We've enjoyed last year, even though we had some, you know what I mean. The games are enjoyable, and we were walking off the pitch saying, "Do you know what? That was good." You know what I mean. So that's what football should be about as well.
Well, I suppose, Maeve, as many female footballers over the last couple of decades up and down the country have found it'd take a brave woman to attempt to push you out of any position. Listen, Maeve, thanks so much, as always, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and I suppose we might be chatting to you again after the games against Antrim and Derry to come in the coming weeks.
Thanks very much, Breffney. Lovely talking to you. Thank you.
And that, folks, is it for another week. Technical things. We are live today, so just getting the nuts and bolts out of the system was always going to be one little mess up. In terms of the week, that is it for the show for the week. Thank you so much to Aidan and to Maeve for coming in and joining us. We're going to be talking next week about the success as well as the games of the weekend. Of course, the ladies travel to Derry, as you just heard Maeve mention. That game throws in at 2 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. A few hardy souls will make that journey, but the game is live as well on the Ladies Gaelic platform. All the games available there. I think the season pass is €50 for the whole year. Well worth looking into if you're a fan of the game. I think the individual games are €5 each. I could be wrong on that. Check social media for all the information. I think it's €5 per game on that. But do give the girls your support, whether it's social media or making that trip to Derry at the weekend. I know they would really, really appreciate your support. The lads, of course, London are in town here in Carrick-on-Shannon, and it's going to be an interesting game. They're top of the table at the moment, but can Leitrim take them off that and leapfrog them with a victory on Sunday afternoon? I know the county expects. Be interesting to see now, as Aidan said earlier, how the county team get on with the mantle of favourites going into a particular clash this weekend. That game is early. Do not adjust your clocks. It is 12 noon. That game throws in Park Sean McDermott on Sunday afternoon. And make sure you get your tickets online. Tickets will not be available on the day at the venue. So do get that sorted prior to the actual weekend and prior to the game itself. You will be left disappointed if you don't have a ticket when you arrive at the game on Sunday afternoon. We'll also be looking back at the successful campaign around the 50-mile challenge. We touched on it earlier, and a very, very successful finale to that in New York over the weekend. Andy Moore, of course, the guest of honour at that in JP Clark's over the weekend. Very successful weekend. It looked to be, by all accounts, from all the comings and goings on Facebook at least, but very, very successful. Over €175,000 raised to help fund the county teams here in the county over the next 12 months. Very, very important piece of work done by some fantastic people, and there was over 1,200 people took part in that campaign. From, I think we talked about last week in terms of the numbers. Eamon Degnan touched on some of the numbers, just astronomical, the number of counties and the number of countries involved, both in participation and donation. Thank you from Leitrim GAA to everybody for all of them. I will pass on their congratulations. I have no doubt they would want me to do that today. Thank you so much for joining us on the first live broadcast. We'll be back again next week. We will talk to you then.